Welcome to the Faith-Based Christian Channel.
Jesus asked, "Can ye not discern the signs of the times?"
Subscribe to the Faith-Based Christian Channel today.
All right, today we're diving into something really fascinating. A letter that's nearly 2,000 years old. It was written by the Apostle Paul to try and calm down a totally panicked church. But here's the thing. Instead of just being comforting, it ended up creating a prophetic puzzle that theologians are still trying to solve. So what on earth did Paul write? Let's get into it. So picture this. It's about 51 AD. You're in the bustling Greek city of Thessalonica, and the brand new Christian church there, they are in a full-blown panic. I mean, they're convinced the end of the world, the apocalyptic day of the Lord, has already started. So their mentor, the Apostle Paul, he hears about this and writes them this urgent letter. And his message is pretty simple. You can see it right here. Hey, don't be alarmed. The day of the Lord has not come.
Okay, so how exactly did he try to calm them down? Well, this is where our little investigation really kicks off. You see, Paul's response isn't just a simple, hey, don't worry about it. Oh no. Instead, he lays out this series of clues, specific events that had to happen before the end could come. And in doing that, he basically created this incredible prophetic puzzle that people have been debating for literally centuries.
Now, to really get why Paul responded the way he did, you gotta understand just how panicked these people were. They were already facing some really intense persecution. And then a false report starts spreading, maybe even a forged letter claiming to be from Paul himself. And that just sends them right over the edge. It convinced them that all the suffering they were going through was the final judgment, and that somehow they'd missed Jesus coming back. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to follow Paul's clues one by one. First up, we'll look at his 2-point prophetic checklist. Then, we're going to zoom way in on a single Greek word that sparks this massive debate. Does it mean a falling away or the rapture? After that, we'll try to unmask the mysterious man of lawlessness, uncover a really surprising historical plot twist, and finally, we'll go on the hunt for the identity of this super enigmatic figure called the restrainer. Okay, so Paul's argument is actually pretty direct and simple. To prove that the day of the Lord hadn't come yet, he points to 2 things that absolutely had to happen first. You can think of it like a prophetic checklist. He tells them, look, in no uncertain terms, the end times cannot start until these 2 specific things have happened, period. And here they are, the 2 big ones. First, an event he calls the apostasy has to happen. And second, this figure he calls the man of lawlessness has to be revealed on the world stage. These 2 signs, they are the absolute foundation of this whole mystery. So let's break them down, one by one.
All right, our first clue. And believe it or not, it all hinges on how you translate one single Greek word. It sounds kind of minor, right? But trust me, how you define this one word completely changes the entire prophetic timeline. The word is apostasia. Now, for centuries, pretty much everyone agreed on what it meant. It was understood one way and one way only. But then, in about the last 70 years or so, a totally new interpretation started gaining a lot of ground, and it created this major fork in the road for how we understand this entire passage. So here's the crucial question, the big debate. Does apostasia mean a religious falling away, a huge rebellion against God on earth? Or does it mean a physical departure, as in the church being taken away from the earth? As you can see, these 2 ideas point in completely opposite directions. You can't have both. So, let's look at the case for falling away. And honestly, the historical evidence is pretty strong. Check this out. Every other time the word apostasia is used in the Bible, we're talking the New Testament and the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, it means a rebellion, either religious or political. Ancient dictionaries, the writings of the early church leaders, they all point to the exact same definition, a defection from the faith. But wait, the case for a physical departure isn't empty-handed. Proponents have some solid points. First, they point out that the verb form of the word, ephistemi, is often used to mean a literal, physical departure. They also point to early English Bibles like the one from Tyndale, which translated the word as departing. And finally, this is a big one for them. They argue that Paul says, the apostasy. That little word the suggests he's talking about a specific event they already knew about, which, they argue, is the rapture he mentioned in his first letter. So, while that debate over clue number 1 is still raging, Paul moves on and gives us a second, equally mysterious sign. He talks about the arrival of this dark figure he calls the man of lawlessness. So, who or what is he? Well, the modern view, the one you hear about most of the time, almost universally says this guy is the Antichrist. A single, charismatic villain who's going to rise to power sometime in the future, demand that everyone worship him as God, and lead this final, massive rebellion. Yeah, that's definitely the dominant view you'll find in a lot of circles today. But just like with our first clue, what's popular today is not what people believed historically. For over 500 years, a completely different interpretation was the main one in Protestant thought. And the answer to who they thought this figure was, yeah, it might just surprise you. Just take a look at this list. We're talking about early reformers like Wycliffe and Huss, huge figures like Martin Luther and William Tyndale, and even a brilliant scientific mind like Sir Isaac Newton. And for them, the interpretation was basically unanimous. They didn't see some single bad guy in the future. Nope. They saw a system that was right there in their present day, the institution of the papacy. And believe me, they were not shy about saying it. Martin Luther's quote right here is about as blunt as it gets, and it really captures the feeling of the entire Reformation. For them, this wasn't some far-off prophecy, it was a present-day reality. So the question is, what happened? Why did this view, which was so central for so long, basically just fade away? Well, the answer actually lies in a pretty brilliant theological and strategic move from the Catholic Church itself. It happened during the Counter-Reformation. They were faced with this incredibly powerful accusation that the papacy was the Antichrist, so they had to come up with a counter-narrative. And what they came up with was this clever two-pronged strategy developed by Jesuit theologians. On one side, you had a view called preterism. That argued all these prophecies were already fulfilled, way back in the past. But the one on the other side, futurism, that was the real game changer. It argued that the Antichrist wasn't the papacy at all, but some single evil individual who would only show up way, way off in the future. And here is the incredible plot twist. That futurist view, from Francisco Ribera, which, remember, was designed in the 16th century specifically to push back against the Reformers' accusations, it was eventually adopted by Protestants themselves. Isn't that wild? Over the centuries, it just slowly replaced what the Reformers originally taught, and it's now the foundation for most of what we think of as popular end-times theology today. The whole single future Antichrist idea. Okay, this brings us to our final clue in Paul's letter, and honestly, it might be the most mysterious one of all. He mentions that there's something or someone that is actively holding back or restraining this man of lawlessness from being revealed. The big problem? Paul never actually says who or what the restrainer is. He just tells the Thessalonians, you know what is holding him back, which is great for them, but we don't. And as you can see here, the list of candidates is just all over the map. Is it human government? The church? The Holy Spirit? Maybe even Michael the Archangel? Nobody can agree. There is absolutely no consensus on this. But what we do know is that figuring this out is critical. Because Paul says that whatever this restraining force is, it has to be taken out of the way first. Its removal is the final trigger. It's only after that happens that the man of lawlessness can finally step onto the world stage, and only then can the day of the Lord really begin. So, at the end of it all, we're left with this intricate puzzle box of intersecting questions. Is the first big sign a great falling away from faith, or is it the departure of the church? Is the main villain a historical system that's been around for centuries, or is it one single man who we're still waiting for? The answers you land on completely change how you see this ancient letter. Is it a prophecy that's already been fulfilled, or is it a roadmap to a future that's still waiting to unfold?
Subscribe to the Faith-Based Christian channel today, and let's grow our faith together in these last days. The King is at the door.